You know what's strange? People forgive a lot of things. They forgive bad manners. They forgive awkwardness. They even forgive dishonesty more often than they admit. But being late, that one people remember. Show up 5 minutes late and suddenly it's not just a habit. It becomes a judgment. You're careless. You're disrespectful. You don't value other people's time. And some people live under that judgment constantly. Not because they're an hour late. Not because they don't care. But because somehow they are never quite on time. Always almost there, always rushing, always apologizing, always promising this time will be different. And yet it keeps happening. 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 on a bad day. Just enough to disappoint people. Just enough to look unreliable. Just enough to make others think they understand you. But they usually don't. Because for some people, lateness is not just lateness. It's pressure, it's chaos, it's guilt. It's a private battle with time that nobody else can see. From the outside, it looks simple. A clock, a deadline, a basic act of respect. But from the inside, it can feel like something far more unsettling. Like time keeps slipping through your hands, no matter how hard you try to hold it together. We all know this person. The friend who texts, "I'm almost there," while still looking for their keys. The co-worker who walks into the meeting 7 minutes late, coffee in hand, face tense with apology. The person who always seems to be in motion but never quite ahead of time. And what makes this psychologically interesting is not that they don't care. Very often they do care. A lot. That's why they look stressed. That's why they apologize before anyone says anything. That's why they promise to do better next time. This is not usually the energy of someone who feels no responsibility. It's the energy of someone who keeps trying to catch up to a rhythm that never fully settles. They are not dramatically late. They are not rebellious in some obvious way. They just live in that strange space between intention and execution. Close enough to believe they can still make it. Late enough to keep disappointing people. And after a while, being the late person becomes its own identity. Not something they do, something they start to believe they are. Picture this. It's 8:04 in the morning. You were supposed to leave at 8 o'clock. But in your mind, it still feels possible. You just need one more minute. One more text, one more thing in your bag, one more quick check, one more small task before you walk out the door. And somehow what felt like a minute becomes 4, then 7. Now you're rushing. You skip part of breakfast. You grab your jacket halfway on. You tell yourself traffic won't be that bad. You mentally recalculate everything in real time. And the strange part is, none of this feels irrational while it's happening. It feels fixable. That's the inner world many chronically late people live inside. Time does not always feel solid to them. It feels negotiable, elastic, recoverable. They believe they can make up the difference later, drive a little faster, walk a little quicker, skip one step, compress the gap. But life usually doesn't work that way. There are transitions, delays, tiny frictions. Parking lots, elevators, traffic lights, forgotten items, unexpected pauses. And those small realities are exactly what their mind tends to underfeel. So to other people, it looks careless. But to them, it often feels like time changed shape without warning. A lot of people think punctuality is just discipline. But often it's something deeper than that. It's regulation. It's pacing. It's how a person learned to move through daily life. If someone grows up in a home with consistent routines, stable expectations, and adults who model preparation, timing starts to feel natural. You leave when you're supposed to leave. You get ready before the pressure hits. You build margin without thinking about it. But not everyone grows up that way. Some people were raised in chaos. In homes where mornings were rushed, where adults were always late too, where plans changed constantly, where emotional urgency mattered more than structure. In that kind of environment, the nervous system learns something very different. It learns to react, not prepare. It learns that life is something you scramble through, something you manage at the last second, something you survive in motion. So later in life, even when the person wants more order, their system may still default to urgency over pacing. They don't naturally build buffer time. They don't instinctively prepare early. They often wait until the feeling becomes real, and by then they're already behind. This is why punctuality is not always a moral issue. Sometimes it is the visible surface of a much older rhythm. Psychologists have long studied how differently people estimate time, especially when attention, stress, and planning are involved. And one of the most relevant ideas here is something called the planning fallacy. That's our tendency to believe things will take less time than they actually do. Not because we're stupid, because the mind prefers an optimistic version of the future. So the person thinks getting ready will take 10 minutes. It takes 18. They think the drive will take 15. It takes 22. They think sending one quick message will take 30 seconds. It takes 3 minutes. There's also something many people describe as time blindness. Not literal blindness, of course, but a weak internal feeling for the passage of time. The clock may be visible, but the emotional reality of time doesn't land with full force until it's too late. And that matters, because human behavior is not driven by information alone. It's driven by felt urgency. Some people feel time early, others feel it late. And those who feel it late often end up living in cycles of underestimating, rushing, and regretting. They are not always ignoring the clock. They are often misreading their relationship to it. This is where the pattern becomes painful. Because it's not just about being late once. It becomes a loop. They underestimate. They delay leaving. They rush. They arrive late. They apologize. They feel ashamed. They promise themselves it will not happen again. And then a few days later, it repeats. That repetition matters, because guilt does not automatically create change. Sometimes it creates anxiety, and anxiety makes timing worse. An anxious mind becomes scattered. It loses sequence. It narrows focus. It tries to solve the immediate moment, not the whole timeline. So now the person is not only bad at pacing, they are ashamed of being bad at pacing. And over time, that shame starts attaching itself to identity. Not I keep arriving late, but I'm that kind of person. Not I struggle with time, but something is wrong with me. That's a heavy thing to carry over a habit many other people dismiss as minor. Because for the person living it, it rarely feels minor. It feels humiliating. Especially when they know how this behavior looks from the outside. Here's the paradox. Many people who are never quite on time actually do respect other people's time. And yet, they keep wasting it. They may be thoughtful, emotionally aware, deeply sincere. They may hate inconveniencing others. They may replay their lateness in their mind for hours afterward. They may arrive already carrying guilt before anyone says a word. But behavior is what other people see, and behavior sends a message. So the apology becomes less visible than the pattern. The good intentions become less visible than the delay. And eventually people stop interpreting the person from the inside. They interpret them from the impact. That's understandable. But it's also incomplete, because many chronically late people are not indifferent. They are conflicted. They want connection. They want trust. They want to be seen as dependable. But they keep colliding with the same invisible weakness. And that contradiction can make them feel deeply misunderstood. Not just by others, by themselves. In work, these people are often more capable than others assume. They may be creative, insightful, fast-thinking, excellent once fully engaged. But they struggle with one thing. Modern systems care about a lot. Precision. Start times, deadlines, transitions, buffer planning, estimating how long ordinary tasks really take. So a person can be talented and still look unreliable, not because they lack ability, because they lack consistency around time. And in relationships, the damage can feel even more personal. A late arrival is rarely just a late arrival. To a friend, it can feel like not being valued. To a partner, it can feel like not being prioritized. To family, it can feel like they can never fully count on you. That's why this pattern creates so much emotional friction, because the person who is late may be thinking, I'm trying, while the other person is thinking, if you cared, you would have been here. And once that interpretation hardens, every future delay carries more weight than the last. A few lost minutes start feeling like evidence of character. That's when a habit turns into a relationship wound. If this pattern already exists in someone, modern life often amplifies it. Phones fracture attention, notifications interrupt momentum, multitasking creates false confidence. We think we're managing 5 small things, but what we're often doing is slicing our awareness into pieces, and timing suffers when attention is fragmented. Now add digital habits to an already optimistic sense of time. One scroll becomes 8 minutes. One reply becomes a conversation. One quick check becomes a delay large enough to break the schedule. Modern life also teaches people to live reactively. Answer now, respond now, check now, switch now. That trains the mind to prioritize the immediate signal over the larger timeline. So if someone is already prone to underestimating transitions, modern life gives them endless opportunities to drift. It doesn't create the pattern from nothing, but it absolutely feeds it. In the end, this was never just about being late. It was about something more human than that. How different minds experience time, how pressure changes behavior, how guilt can coexist with love, how a person can care deeply and still fail in visible ways. Some people live by the clock. Others live by momentum, by emotional readiness, by internal pacing. And when the world is built around rigid time, those people often look flawed before they are understood. That doesn't mean lateness doesn't matter. It does. It affects people. It strains trust. It creates real frustration. But understanding the psychology behind it changes the story. It moves us away from the simplest explanation, away from they just don't care, and towards something more honest. Some people are not fighting other people's schedules. They are fighting their own unstable relationship with time. So the truth is, people who are never quite on time are not always careless. Sometimes they are people carrying invisible patterns they never fully learned to master. Patterns of urgency, patterns of optimism, patterns of shame, patterns that look small on the outside but shape entire relationships on the inside. They are not always disrespecting the world. Sometimes they are struggling to move through a world organized by a rhythm their mind does not naturally follow. They are not rebels against the clock. They are translators trying to speak a language that never came naturally to them. And people like that are often judged by the delay, while no one sees the effort happening underneath.